Well, good morning. Welcome back to In the Know with KO. I'm your host, Kristen Adams, also known as KO. Grab a cup of whatever makes you happy. You might also want to grab a tissue because today, the hardest form of love is grief. And that is something I know a lot about, unfortunately. But today, we're going to talk about grief because I believe it's something that we need to normalize because it's something every single one of us will experience, yet none of us are ever really ready for it. And I don't know that even this conversation is going to make you ready for it, but I'm hoping it will at least open the possibilities of knowing you're not alone. And if you've ever lost someone or something that mattered deeply, a person, a relationship, a season of life, then your grief isn't just sadness. It's love with nowhere to land. And the more you love, the harder grief will be. I used to think grief meant that there was something wrong with me and that I wasn't moving on fast enough. But what I've learned is that grief is not a sign of weakness. It's actually an expression of the deepest kind of love. And again, the more you love someone, the deeper that is going to be. And it may never end, but it will change and it will get better. But it's definitely never going to end. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news because it's a reality. And I think it's something that is, for some reason, there's like a stigma attached to talking about it. And everybody waits for it to happen to talk about it. But I think the more we talk about it when we're not in the middle of it, the better prepared we're going to be. So to me, what grief really is the heart's way of holding on when the mind can't make sense of loss. And I've lost relationships with people. Sometimes it was my fault. Sometimes it was theirs. But the fault doesn't necessarily matter because the relationship ended. And it's still grieving because it's a loss. I've lost jobs before, and I've lost relationships before, and I've lost loved ones. Okay? It's messy. It's unpredictable. It's deeply, deeply human. And it's something that I think is actually beautiful. Because if you are fortunate enough to know love, then you do know grief. Whether you love your job or you love a person that you're in a relationship with, or you love your family, you know grief. And it does show up in waves. One day you can be absolutely okay. The next day you're walking through Trader Joe's crying over the playlist that they've got. I don't know about you. Trader Joe's is it's my nemesis. I love Trader Joe's. I love the snacks. I love the food. I love the people. The people are always so fun. They're always so upbeat. You know, that there's like a certain type of charismatic person that they hire to work at Trader Joe's. But the music that they play always triggers me to feel feelings, and it brings something out of me. I think because they play a lot of stuff from the 80s, if I had to guess. And growing up in the 80s, I think it's one of the best generations of ask me. That's my greatest genre of music. I also love a lot of stuff from the 50s. But to me, grief doesn't leave. It never leaves. But it does change shape because we change. You have initial moments and then you have future moments. And you can't necessarily prepare for any of them. Even when you think you do, even if you see it coming, I'm here to tell you, you are not going to prepare for how you feel and you're not going to prepare for how people respond to you. So when we grieve, it's because we loved deeply. And love, real soul level love, never disappears. That love always remains. But it will transform and it will take shape in different ways. So how grief works and why we resist it. Well, society, once again, is guilty for forcing us to feel the need to get over it or be strong. But that's not how healing works. I spent a very long time forcing myself to be very strong when my mom died. And then 3 years later, my dad. And, you know, both times I felt a responsibility to everyone in my life, whether they were my immediate family or people in my inner and even outer circles. I had to put on this strong front. I had to be KO. I had to be this powerful, strong, nothing's going to get me down. I'm going to always be positive person. And that actually made it worse because suppressing that grief did not protect me. It literally buried me under the silence of grief. And it was silent to the world because I didn't share it, but it was loud as loud could be inside of me. And grief is actually the process of learning to live with love that has changed form. You know, I realized that grief, it's not about letting go. It's about learning how to hold on differently. Because when you love someone, you never want to let them go. But if you can figure out how to keep them a part of your world, that is a game changer. For me, when I knew that my mom's life was becoming to an end, something started to burn inside of me. And I knew, okay, I have this public speaking piece inside of me that I'm not afraid of. I have a great circle of people in my life. And my mom had a tremendous legacy. Anyone who knew her loved her. She was very good to people. She was very thoughtful. And she was strong. She overcame lots of things in life that would have definitely broken people. And I really admired her for that. When she and my dad first broke up, she didn't even have a regular full-time job. She was cleaning houses part-time and leaning on my dad's double income to survive. And she went from cleaning houses to working part-time as a bookkeeper, making $5 an hour, okay? And she turned that into a huge career. And I would like to say I modeled her behavior and I walked the trail that she blazed and very proudly created a career for myself starting at the bottom as well. And eventually she was a top executive for her company. She managed an entire region and multiple people. And I'm still in touch with some of them to this day. And she really did leave a tremendous legacy. Now, with that said, that legacy was something that I put my passion right into. And I created a nonprofit in honor of my mom. That kept her a part of my life. It gave me reasons to have conversations about her and share the really, really great and powerful parts of her that I wanted to help identify in other people and acknowledge them as well. So I started raising money through this nonprofit and sent students to college. And I spoke at local high schools about why she was awesome. And I wanted to recognize students that were making a difference in the world. You know, the students that were getting straight A's and they were on the honor roll, they were going places, they were not the ones I was looking for. I was looking for the kids that were more like me and my mom, the ones that were out there making a difference. They were rising above the influence of others. And those were the ones I pulled out of the pack and recognized. And those were the ones that got those college scholarships. And we did that very successfully for 5 years. Very proud of that. And it ran its course. And I was ready to let it rest and put it aside. And there are still a tremendous amount of ways that I honor my mom. I have several pieces of her jewelry. I have really beautiful china for fancy holidays or special occasions. And I even have, little trinkets that belong to her around the house and pictures and whatever. And that's how I like to honor her. And I kind of do the same thing with my dad and my grandmother. But the whole point of that is when you let go of the silence and you open up the conversations about the people you love or the things that you love, whether, it could have been a business, whatever, you realize you're not alone and other people will feed off of that energy. And now you can have really great conversations. You can have personal reflection, but let me give you a KO story, okay? A story of loss that didn't just change me, but it was the first time that grief hit me hard. The confusion between missing someone and thinking you're supposed to be better by now, huge misconception, huge. And the moment you felt your loved one's presence or you found peace in something small, whether it was a scent, a song, or a memory, you felt that comfort, right? I mean, I know that's what works for me. Well, I have a cousin who reminded me that it's okay to smile through grief. There is room for both grief and joy to coexist. And I would often feel guilty, like, how could I be smiling right now when the world just lost this amazing human being that I love more than anything? And as an only child, I found myself as an adult orphan. I'm not up for adoption. I know that, many of you are probably going to be like, oh my gosh, she's an orphan. We can adopt her. Nope. I'm not up for adoption. However, I am what they technically call an only child adult orphan. And that's kind of sad. But I have a lot of really great people in my life that I consider family that aren't. And they're the family that I choose, and they choose me back. And they've loved me through all of these ups and downs and crazy things. But the story of loss that changed me the most, I used to think it was going to be the loss of my mom, but it wasn't, because I still had my dad and I still had my grandma. The story of loss that changed me was when my dad died suddenly. He had a massive heart attack, didn't see it coming. I arrived to the hospital at the same time as the paramedics. And if you want to talk about trauma, seeing the person that you love as your lifetime hero, fighting for his life on a gurney, being worked on feverishly by people who are moving like an episode of Grey's Anatomy. It was like an out-of-body experience for me to see that happen. And it took me years to overcome, years. And to this day, it's been almost 6 years. March will be 6 years since that day. I still struggle, and I still have hard moments. But you know what? I give myself the space to have them. I have that feeling right now just talking about it. I have tears in my eyes, and I'm going to humanize this episode a little bit at the risk of running my very expensive mascara. It's okay to feel, because that is the connection of the love inside of the grief that we are forced as a society to silence. But there's really no need. If you're walking through Trader Joe's, if you're just out and about, feel the feels. If you're embarrassed by it, that's also understandable, because we don't always want to explain ourselves when we're out and about. But the part of the story that really changed me was when my grandmother passed away. Now, yeah, she was in her mid-90s, guys. She lived an incredible, long, happy, healthy life. But all of a sudden, I realized I am now the matriarch of my family. Oh my gosh. It hit me. I am now the head of my family. I don't have that person above me anymore in my immediate family to go to for advice. I am now the advice giver. I am now the caregiver. I am now the holiday hoster. I am the one. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. I am just not ready. How did they do this to me? We had so many things that we still needed to talk about. And I had so many things I was still wanting to share. And I had questions. I still have questions. I never got the recipe from my mom's fudge. And I never got my grandmother's actual meatball recipe written down. Thankfully, I did it enough with her over the years that I have it in memory, and I'm going to do my best to translate that to my kids. But I realized that I am now the one. And I had this tremendous wave of grief overcome me. And it was like a year after my grandmother died, which was 7 years after my mom, 3 years after my dad. Like, I had all of these years of grief behind me and building. But what I had to realize was that I have a responsibility, and my responsibility was to honor their legacy. And honoring that legacy is 100% the fuel in my heart that gives me the drive to smile, to laugh, to keep those traditions alive, to be very present with my husband and with my kids, no matter what it is that we're doing. And, you know, when it hits you, it could be literally like a 2x4 to the face. It comes out of nowhere. And what grief teaches us is how fragile and sacred life is. And that, I think, is what stirred inside of me, because I didn't really take vacations with my parents. And I often see friends my age going to Europe in the summer with their parents and their children and having these big family trips, or, you know, their parents are still there for their kids. And I think for me, as I go through life, I realize, as hard as it is that my mom and my dad and my grandma and family that I've had to disconnect with for whatever reason, the hard part about them not being there are those memories that they're not making, the photos that we're not taking. But I can't let that stop me from being there, because if I get so wrapped up in that, then I'm not present. And now I'm missing out. And then I'm going to have regret. And that regret turns into guilt. And that guilt turns into shame. And it's like this backwards vicious cycle. And I want that cycle to go forward, stripping away that small stuff, because after loss, you see what really matters. I can tell you, I've been in abusive relationships. I've literally been punched in the face by an ex-boyfriend. And let me tell you, that did not hurt nearly as bad as grief. I'll take a punch to the face 100 times before I will tell you that saying goodbye to someone you love is easy. It's not. But I'm also going to tell you, I chose to celebrate. When my mom died, she gave me commanding orders, which, if anyone knew my mom, this is not a surprise. She gave me my marching orders before she died. Don't you throw me a doom and gloom funeral with everybody wearing black. It's disgusting. I want good music. I want good food. And, you know, I would like a mass at a church to honor my Catholic traditions, but I want a party. So guess what? We did a little bit of both. We had a traditional Catholic mass. I delivered a eulogy, and we had a traditional funeral. We released doves in the air. It was beautiful. It was magical. It was special. And I remember we were leaving the church and driving, and my husband says, "Turn around." We're in the car. We're driving on the highway, heading to the cemetery. And I turn around, and we had this tremendous police motorcade. My mom was recognized like a celebrity. It was really quite amazing. And it was actually very comforting to see that many people showing up for her. But this police motorcade extended further than I could see. And I realized, wow, that is a legacy, and that needs to be honored. 3 years later, my dad died. Well, guess what? A week after my dad died, COVID took over the world. Now, what I'm about to share, I am definitely not alone. And I know that there were people that had way worse situations. But imagine you lose now your second parent, who you were leaning on after losing your first, only to be told by the world, oh, guess what? You cannot have a funeral because we have coronavirus and COVID-19 is taking over. So there was no funeral. And for me, I took a lot of comfort in people coming over and giving me hugs and bringing food and having wine or coffee and spending that time together. And now I had to shut my door, and I had to be in the feels. I had to face my emotions, and I not only had to face them, I had to face them, and I had to do homeschooling with my kids, which that in itself was a freaking nightmare, because I am not a teacher. I have dyslexia. I'm going through grief for the second time, losing my second parent, and now the world shuts down, and we didn't even have a funeral. Well, the world eventually got back to normal, as we can kind of call it, as normal as it can get. So you know what I decided? I decided with my dad's wife, who I love, and my family, who I adore. 2 years later, we threw my dad a party. And I encouraged everyone to wear their favorite Tommy Bahama kind of shirt. And I had a musician there, and we served his favorite morning beverage of Bloody Marys, and we had good food, and we had a beautiful montage of pictures, and we celebrated him. Well, a couple years later, my grandmother passed away, and she told me point blank, do not cry for me. Well, okay, sorry. I did a lot of crying, and I still do a lot of crying because I miss her and I love her. But you know what? She told me, I don't want a funeral. I want a party. She didn't want a funeral at all. Okay, now that was very surprising to my very traditional Catholic Italian New York grandmother. And I honored her wishes. And she loved ballroom dancing. So you know what we did? We threw her a ballroom dance party. Yep. I put out her favorite wine, a giant tray of her favorite Italian pastries, and we danced and we celebrated. I did another beautiful video montage, and I said some really beautiful words, including her favorite word, shit. I mean, it worked its way into my, I guess you could call it a eulogy, as close to it as possible. But let me tell you, when it comes to grief and when it comes to processing that grief, don't let anyone tell you how to do it. Honor the people in your life, honor the situations in your life that you are grieving, whatever way you see fit to honor the person or situation. Because if I would have listened to outsiders, I never would have had those amazing celebrations that I still treasure to this day. They were beautiful memories. And I also felt it gave everyone more of an opportunity to talk about the people that we lost, because I like to think that they're not lost. I know exactly where they are. But you know what? They're also inside of me, and they're also inside of my children. And I see that every single day. So grief cracked me open, but what poured out was love, not emptiness. And you can choose that too. It invites us to slow down, feel deeply, and appreciate that connection in a brand new way. And you may have to try different things. I don't know that there's a one size fits all when it comes to overcoming grief or celebrating life or how to do a funeral. I mean, I've gotten pretty good at it. And I was even asked to do this for a dear friend of mine, Ruthie, who passed away at the incredibly young age of 42. I sat at her bedside, and as she was fading away, she asked everyone to leave the room and confided in me to put together her celebration of life. So once again, something I couldn't read in a book that translated into a gift from many, many years ago was something that I was able to do for her family. And man, I did not take that lightly. That was probably one of the hardest memorial services that I've ever put together, but it was one of the most beautiful. It was pink. It had butterflies. It had home-cooked food. It was beautiful. And how to sit with grief is something you cannot rush. Healing doesn't have a timeline. Some people, some people get over things very quickly, and some people may never. And both scenarios are absolutely okay. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Some people need therapy. Some people need medication. Some people need church. Some people need family. Some people need to be alone. Some people need a little bit of all of those things. Guess what? It's an acquired taste, just like anything else. And it's okay to coexist with joy. It's okay to laugh again. Talking about the person or talking about the loss, it's how it stays alive. And even if it's hard, it's okay. It may not be as hard the next time you talk about it. Maybe it's only hard the first time. I don't know. But when grief hits hard, remind yourself the ache that you are feeling means you loved deeply. And that really is so beautiful. And my encouragement for anybody who's listening or watching, if you're grieving, know this. You're not broken. You're human. You're not weak. You're loving someone or something beyond space and time. And grief is not something that you get over. It's something you grow around. If you've ever seen a plant or a tree, anything growing and something gets in the way, it doesn't usually die. It usually grows around it. I know in my neighborhood, like every sidewalk and driveway is literally busted up by a bunch of oak trees. And it's beautiful because the trees are amazing. But those sidewalks and driveways, we're not going to stop that tree from growing. And that's how we can look at grief. It may be bumpy, we may have to go around, but we can still grow. And maybe, just maybe, that love you still feel is proof that they're not really gone. It's something that you have complete control over. So, in closing, today, if you're missing someone, if you're missing something, take a deep breath. Say their name. Refer to the situation, refer to the person. Remember their laugh. Feel the love. Do something to honor them. It can be private. You don't have to share it. You don't have to publicize it. You know, the world has led us to believe that if it didn't happen online and you didn't share it, it didn't happen. And that is not true. Some of the hardest work that I've ever done since losing each of my parents has been done in private. Now, I've shared some of the EMDR therapeutic work that I've done to overcome PTSD and trauma and even a little depression. But not everything I do is done publicly. And, you know, because grief, it's just love refusing to give up. So if you're still feeling it, take that as a positive thing. Take that as some form of a compliment that love was powerful and it was strong and it's not giving up on you. So don't give up on that love either. So this has been a very heavy episode. And I thank you. Thank you very much for sharing this sacred space with me. Until next time, keep loving, keep feeling, and stay in the know.